I asked her to marry me, and she rejected me because her career mattered more. Years later, she found me married, peaceful, and living the exact life she chose not to have. My name is Matthias. I'm 31 years old. I teach history at a public high school, and I'm also the assistant football coach in a quiet suburb outside Boston. And for a long time, I thought love was about waiting for someone to finally choose you. I was wrong. Valentina was 29. A corporate attorney at one of those elite law firms where a person's value is measured in billable hours, sacrificed weekends, and how little sleep you can survive on. We had been together for 3 years. Living together for almost a year and a half in my modest 2-bedroom apartment near the school. Our relationship worked in a strange but comfortable way. We were opposites, but we fit. Sunday mornings were our ritual. She covered the kitchen table with legal files while I made pancakes. We debated legal precedent and historical context like it was an intimate game. She helped me proofread essays about the Civil War. I cooked dinner while she vented about demanding partners and impossible clients. We didn't finish each other's sentences. But we had rhythm. I was convinced we had a future. It turns out, I was the only one who believed that. Valentina never did anything halfway. If she believed in an argument, she researched it until there was nothing left to challenge. If she committed to a workout routine, she followed it like religion. And when she decided she wanted to become a partner, she created a 5-year plan with perfectly defined quarterly goals. At first, I admired that intensity. Her ambition. Her clarity. Her discipline. I didn't realize, not until it was too late, that I wasn't part of that plan. The signs were there. She canceled dinners at the last minute for urgent calls. She brought her laptop on every trip and spent half the vacation in meetings by the hotel pool. She got irritated when I suggested taking a day off, like rest itself was a weakness. I kept telling myself it was temporary. That's just the sacrifice phase, I thought. Once she makes partner, everything will balance out. But it never did. There was always another case. Another client. Another goal demanding all of her attention. The ring belonged to my grandmother. My mother had kept it for years, waiting for the day I found the right person. 2 weeks before the proposal, I drove an hour to my parents' house just to get it. My mother cried when I told her why I was there. She said she always knew Valentina was special, that she could see how much I loved her. I wish she had been wrong. My father shook my hand and told me he was proud of the man I'd become. He said something I'll never forget: find someone who helps you carry the hard days, not just someone who celebrates the good ones. I truly believed Valentina was that person. When the waiter cleared the plates, I pulled out the small velvet box. My heart was racing. My hands were sweating. I had rehearsed my words dozens of times in the mirror that morning. But before I could say a single sentence, I saw her face change. Not surprise. Not joy. Panic. She looked at me with a cold, distant expression, like I was a client presenting a bad contract. "What are you doing?" she asked. Her tone was professional. Controlled. This wasn't a spontaneous rejection. It was a collision of worlds. The emotional language disappeared and was replaced by evaluation, distance, damage control. The restaurant went silent. Some people smiled, expecting a happy moment. A woman nearby even pulled out her phone to record. Valentina looked at the ring. Then at me. Then back at the ring. Her eyes filled with tears, but not the kind you see when someone is overwhelmed with joy. These were the tears you get when you know you're about to hurt someone. "I can't," she whispered. I sat back down slowly. It felt like something heavy slammed into my chest. Everyone was watching. I asked her, calmly, even though everything inside me was collapsing, if she couldn't, or if she didn't want to. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. When pain is too big, the body goes into survival mode. She explained her decision with the same precision she used in contract negotiations. 80-hour workweeks weren't optional. Networking events were mandatory. Late-night emergencies were part of the job. The partners were always watching. Marriage meant divided attention. Divided attention meant risk. And for her, marriage was a risk she wasn't willing to take. The hardest part wasn't the rejection. It was realizing she had already thought this through. She knew I was going to propose. Just like I had rehearsed my words, she had rehearsed her rejection. Valentina kept talking like she was closing a deal. She told me about a merger case that could define her career. She told me about becoming the youngest associate seriously considered for partnership. She told me the firm demanded everything, and she was ready to give it everything. Her explanation was logical. Flawless. Reasonable. But logic doesn't account for a man sitting across from you with a ring in his pocket and his heart exposed on the table. Logic doesn't understand Sunday pancakes. Or the way I knew exactly how she liked her coffee. Or the 3 years I believed we were building something permanent. That night didn't just end a chapter. It showed me, with brutal clarity, that the future I imagined, never existed in her mind. I tried every approach you can imagine. I sat there holding my grandmother's ring like an idiot, turning it between my fingers, searching for a way out that didn't break us both. I offered compromise. We don't have to rush, I said. We can do a long engagement. No dates. No pressure. I told her we could wait until she hit her career goals. 5 years. 10 years. Whatever it took. I told her I didn't need kids right away. That she could keep her last name. That nothing needed to change. I wasn't trying to trap her. I just wanted to know. If at any point in the future, she could see herself walking through life with me. She shook her head, again and again, at every option. And I watched her lawyer brain dismantle each one like she was marking up a contract in red ink. These are patches, she said. Surface fixes. Then she said something that made the air leave my lungs. Matthias, you're asking me to choose. And she paused, like she wanted the words to land clean. So I'm choosing. That was it. No confusion. No, I need time. No, I'm scared. Just a line drawn in permanent marker. She chose her career. And what hurt most wasn't that she had ambition. It was the realization that she had already ranked everything in her life, and I didn't make the top of the list. I was lighter than billable hours. Lighter than partnership. Lighter than a corner office. I put the ring box back in my pocket. Then I called the waiter and asked for the check. When the waiter approached, his face looked like pure horror. I'm convinced nobody in that restaurant was breathing normally. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't try to convince her. I didn't create a scene that would give strangers a story to repeat for weeks. Even though they probably talked anyway. I just looked at her and said, "Thank you for being honest, and for not wasting any more of my time." The words came out almost automatically. Her eyes widened. She expected something else. She expected me to fight. To insist. To beg. To prove my love through persistence, like some romantic movie where the man makes a grand gesture and the woman suddenly realizes she was wrong. And maybe she wanted that. Not because she wanted to say yes. But because she wanted to feel valuable enough to be chased. Then I said something that still surprises me because of how calm it sounded. If I have to convince you to marry me, Valentina, then you're not the person I should marry. I paid the bill. The waiter avoided my eyes. And even with my heart cracked open, I walked her to her car because my parents raised me with manners. It was February in Boston, the kind of cold that gets into your bones and stays there. She sat behind the wheel without starting the engine. Her hands were trembling on the steering wheel. I told her, I truly hope you become partner. I hope all of this gives you what you're looking for. And I meant it. Even while it felt like someone had scooped my chest out with a spoon. She drove away. I stood there watching her taillights disappear. And I understood something fundamental about love. Sometimes loving someone means accepting that you're not what they need. Even when you wish you were. I thought that was the end. A clean breakup. Two adults wanting different things. Sad, but mature. The kind of ending people nod at and say, at least you found out now, not 10 years later. But 3 days later, everything changed. Her assistant called me by mistake. Wrong number. Just 30 seconds of confusion before we both realized what happened. And in those 30 seconds, I heard something that made my blood go cold. Valentina had spoken to the senior partner at her firm the morning of my proposal. Before dinner. Before I even put on my coat. She told him she was willing to make difficult personal sacrifices to prove her commitment to the firm. And the partner asked her directly, "Do you have any personal ties that could interfere with the merger case?" And Valentina said, "No," she said no. Before I even asked the question. Before she even saw the ring. Which meant. She didn't reject me in the moment. She had already decided to remove me from her life. I wasn't someone she loved but couldn't prioritize. I was an obstacle. A liability. A line item she had already cut from the budget. The anger I felt wasn't loud. It wasn't explosive. It was the kind of anger that goes cold and quiet. The kind that doesn't make you break things. It makes you erase someone. Delete the photos. Pack the memories. Remove every trace that they ever had access to your heart. I didn't do it that day. But I felt it. And I sat with the truth until it settled into something harder inside me. Something less forgiving. Valentina threw herself into work like someone running from a crime scene. Within a week, she took on the merger case in full. 14-hour days became normal. Then 16. Friends started telling me things I never asked about. She was the first to arrive at the firm, and the last to leave. Sometimes she slept in the conference room instead of going back to her luxury apartment downtown. Vending machine coffee. Cold sushi left untouched on her desk at midnight. Her life reduced to billable hours and client calls. She didn't need to sacrifice herself like that. But she did it anyway. Because when someone builds their identity on ambition alone, slowing down feels like failure. She was bleeding herself dry to prove loyalty to people who would replace her without blinking if she collapsed tomorrow. I wasn't burning out. I was hollowing out. I couldn't stay in our apartment anymore. Her coffee mug still sat in the cabinet. Her books were still lined up on the shelf. Every room felt like a museum dedicated to someone who had decided I wasn't worth choosing. One day, while I was at school, she packed her things and left. She left the key on the kitchen counter. Next to a short note, "Thank you for understanding." As if breaking my heart had been a favor I'd agreed to. That note wasn't kindness. It was self-justification. A clean exit so she wouldn't have to carry the full weight of what she'd done. I did what I always do when emotions overwhelm me. I hid in work. It wasn't healthy, but it worked. I stayed late at school. I volunteered for every committee. I ran extra tutoring sessions. I coached morning and evening football practices. Without realizing it, I became the advisor for the debate team too, even though it wasn't in my job description. The principal asked me one day if everything was okay at home. I told her I just loved my job. She didn't fully believe me. But she didn't push. The students held me up when I couldn't hold myself together. They came every day with their own problems. Parents divorcing. Money stress. Bad choices. Anger they didn't know what to do with. They didn't care about my broken heart. They just needed someone to show up. And showing up for them gave me a reason to get out of bed when I didn't have one for myself. There was one kid in particular, Benjamin. He started the year as a bench player with a bad attitude. His father had left. His mother worked double shifts to keep the lights on. He showed up to practice angry, arguing with teammates, challenging authority. Most coaches would have written him off. I didn't. I saw something familiar. That desperate need to prove you matter to someone. So I didn't give up on him. Extra practices. Long conversations about life that had nothing to do with football. Driving him home when his mom couldn't. By the end of the season, he was starting. His grades improved enough to qualify for a scholarship. After the championship game, he hugged me and said, "You're the only adult who didn't quit on me." That moment meant more to me than any relationship I'd ever had. That's when I realized. Maybe I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I couldn't live in the apartment the way it was. So I changed it. I painted the walls colors she would have hated. Warm, earthy tones instead of her minimalist gray. I replaced the furniture we picked together with second-hand pieces, objects with history, just not our history. A leather chair from an older man downsizing his home. A coffee table from a family cutting expenses. I hung photos of my family, my team, trips I took before I ever met her. The space stopped being ours. It became mine. And that felt more freeing than I expected. Friends we shared slowly drifted away. Not out of conflict, just distance. People don't like standing between two versions of the same story. I didn't fight it. Healing sometimes means letting go of everything connected to the wound, even the good parts. About 9 months later, I heard Valentina had become junior partner. The youngest in her firm's history. Exactly as she'd planned. Someone told me she celebrated alone in her downtown apartment with expensive takeout. Everyone who mattered was still at the office. Success without witnesses is heavier than people admit. I met Camila almost 2 years after everything fell apart. It was through a school literacy program. She was a children's librarian volunteering to help kids who struggled with reading. I was there supervising students completing community service hours. She had a way of talking to kids that made them feel capable instead of broken. She turned challenges into adventures. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the need to hide inside work just to survive. She wore her dark hair in a messy braid. She pushed her glasses up her nose without noticing. She laughed too loud for a quiet library, and somehow it fit perfectly. She remembered every child's name after hearing it once. Camila wasn't anything like Valentina. And over time, I realized. That was exactly what I needed. We started with short conversations. Then coffee. Then real dates. Simple things. Mini golf. Farmers markets. Used bookstores. Our first real date was in one of those bookstores. We spent 3 hours recommending books and completely forgot we were supposed to get dinner. We ended up eating pizza on a park bench at 9 p.m. Still the best date of my life. Camila started showing up to my football games without being asked. Within weeks, she knew every player's name, number, and position. She brought snacks. Made signs. Without realizing it, she became the unofficial team mom. And she wasn't even my fiancé. She met my family and fit in like she'd always been there. Helped my mom in the kitchen. Debated book recommendations with my dad. Played cards with my younger sister. My family is loud, chaotic, and exhausting. Camila loved every second. After our second family dinner, my mother pulled me aside. She said, "She's not trying to impress anyone. She just found her place." And she was right. Camila didn't compete with my life. She built with it. Being with her was easy in a way I never knew love could be. No negotiations. No rankings. No feeling like I had to earn my place. She wanted me there. That was it. 10 months after we started dating, I proposed to Camila. Not in a fancy restaurant. Not in front of strangers. I did it at a lighthouse in Cape Cod. Just the ocean. The wind. And an honest question. I didn't use my grandmother's ring. This time, I chose one myself, simple, understated, with a small diamond that caught the light without demanding attention. Before I could even finish asking, Camila laughed and cried at the same time. She said yes immediately. And in that moment, I finally understood what it feels like when two people want the same future. Not when one tries to convince the other. Not when one sacrifices while the other calculates. But when both stand in the same place, pointing at the same horizon, saying, yes. That way. We got married 5 months later. Small ceremony. Close friends. Family. Half of my football team insisted on being ushers. Those kids had no idea how much they'd carried me through my darkest months. Camila didn't hesitate for a second. The ceremony was chaotic. Imperfect. Loud. And absolutely perfect. No seating drama. No competing egos. No performance. Just people who had been there when there was nothing to celebrate. That's the difference. A wedding doesn't reveal who you are when everything goes right. It reveals who stays when everything breaks. I assumed Valentina and I were done forever. Parallel lives. Different values. Different definitions of success. Until the announcement of our marriage reached her, accidentally. Her legal assistant, Isabella, stumbled across a small local article during lunch. One of those community pieces about educators getting married. She showed it to Valentina casually. The photo was us, Camila and me, standing on the courthouse steps, smiling without restraint. Camila's hand on my chest. My arm around her waist. Real happiness. Unfiltered. Impossible to fake. The article talked about how we met through a literacy program. Our shared love for books. The lighthouse proposal. Details. Real life. Valentina locked herself in a bathroom stall for almost 20 minutes trying to breathe normally. It wasn't jealousy. It was vertigo. The kind you feel when you realize the path you chose doesn't lead where you were promised. From that day on, things at work started hitting differently for her. Clients divorcing after decades of choosing ambition over partnership. Prenups signed by couples already protecting themselves before saying vows. She mediated broken marriages for a living, while realizing she'd dismantled her own for the same reasons. Then came one case that shattered something inside her. A senior partner from another firm sat across from her, exhausted. His wife of 30 years was leaving him. He told Valentina how they'd built everything together at first, late nights, shared goals, mutual support. Then somewhere along the way, he stopped seeing her as a partner and started treating her like background support. He chose the firm every time. Now she was gone. Valentina charged him $400 an hour to translate regret into legal language, while recognizing the exact future she was building for herself. That's the moment fear changes. Not fear of losing something, but fear of becoming someone you don't respect. Months later, a pro bono education funding case landed on Valentina's desk. She volunteered. Partly because it looked good for partnership. Partly because, deep down, education still mattered to her. When she reviewed the list of district contacts, her hands froze. My name was there. Department head of history. Athletic director. She told herself she could handle one professional meeting. Adults. Distance. Control. The meeting was set at the district administrative building, fluorescent lights, gray carpet, stale coffee. She arrived early. Over-prepared. I was already there. Calm. Grounded. Present. Camila walked in a moment later with 2 coffees. She was 6 months pregnant. She called me, love, without thinking. I stood, took the coffee, and guided her to a chair with my hand on her lower back, that unconscious gesture you make when someone belongs to you. I introduced them neutrally. Valentina handles the education case. This is my wife, Camila. She works at the children's library. Camila smiled, warm, genuine. She thanked Valentina sincerely for taking the case. Not polite gratitude. Real gratitude. The meeting lasted 47 minutes. Numbers. Impact projections. Student data. I mentioned casually that I was finishing my doctoral thesis on education policy. Camila helped edit drafts while taking care of our daughter. Antonia was too, obsessed with dinosaurs and purple boots. We were also expecting another baby. Valentina asked out of reflex. I showed a photo of Antonia covered in finger paint. I said, honestly, I've never understood how I got this lucky. The words landed heavier than intended. Not because I meant to hurt. Because the happiness was real. Valentina returned to her luxury apartment that night. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Harbor view. Silence. She sat on her designer couch for 3 hours, staring at nothing. 6 weeks later, she won the education case. The district kept its funding. I emailed her a simple, thank you. That was our last direct contact. Life kept unfolding. Camila and I welcomed our second daughter, Isabella. At 2 a.m. Antonia declared herself the best big sister in history. I defended my doctoral thesis on 4 hours of sleep. Camila sat in the back holding both girls, keeping them quiet with snacks and sheer determination. When the committee approved, she cheered louder than anyone. The room laughed. It was chaos. It was perfect. That fall, I was appointed the youngest vice principal in district history. Valentina made partner. Different paths. Different destinations. A year later, I heard she had a breakdown at work. Crying during a client meeting. Found sitting on her office floor after midnight. The firm put her on indefinite leave. 3 months later, she resigned. She sold the luxury apartment. Moved to a smaller place outside the city. Started legal aid work. She earned a fraction of what she used to. For the first time, she had normal hours. Someone said she looked different. Softer. More human. At a cafe months later, she asked about me. Just once. Not dramatic. Not nostalgic. Just, confirming a fact. She nodded when she heard I was happy. As if a door finally closed. Today, my house is full. Antonia is 7. Still convinced dinosaurs go with everything. Isabella is 4 and wants to work with books like her mom. Tomas, 2, laughs at everything. Especially one word he finds endlessly funny. When I look at this life, the noise, the mess, the imperfect calm, I know something with absolute certainty: nothing needs to change. This life is exactly where I belong. Some choices aren't paid with tragedy. They're paid with the quiet knowledge that the train only comes once. And watching it leave, is the price of believing success mattered more than love. I asked her to marry me, and she said no because her career mattered more. Years later, she found me married, fulfilled, and living the life she decided not to choose. Not because she was wrong. But because we wanted different definitions of success. And only one of them included coming home to love.